Hey guys, and welcome to another Let Me Explain video. So today I'm going to be talking about the scene that I believe to be the greatest scene of all time in any film, and that scene is the Ride of the Rohirrim in The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. For those who have seen one of my previous Let Me Explain videos, I talk about why I believe The Return of the King is the greatest film of all time, and the scene involving the Ride of the Rohirrim greatly contributes to why I believe that is so. I've outlined 5 key reasons today as to why I think it is the greatest scene of all time, and I'm going to get into those shortly, but before I do, let me set the scene so that you can, for those who do not remember exactly what happens in the Ride of the Rohirrim. To give a quick recap, essentially the scene is set with the Great Battle of Middle-earth taking place at the walls of Minas Tirith, with the forces of Mordor attacking the forces of good. It is the ultimate battle for all of Middle-earth, essentially, and the good guys are very much overmatched. They're decimated, they're being destroyed, they're on the brink of total destruction. And right when they think all hope is lost, there arrives on the hill in the distance the army of Rohan, the riders of the Rohirrim, and led by King Theoden, and they arrive at a crucial juncture where it gives them some sort of hope that the battle could still be won, even though they still are very much overmatched. And nonetheless, they ride and charge onto the orc ranks and lead what is a very inspirational and uplifting and just phenomenal moment in cinema. I think you would truly find it difficult to find anyone that finds this scene to be anything short of incredible. But why exactly do I believe it to be the greatest scene of all time? Well, let's get into that now. When you think of the key factors that contribute to a great scene in any film, it really comes down to obviously the story and where this scene takes place within the story and how it elevates the story to another level after the scene obviously takes place. Then you obviously have to consider the characters that are existing within that scene and how do they enhance it and take it to another level. You can even factor in things like the music, the musical score, the soundtrack is all obviously very key, especially when you're talking about uplifting and inspiring moments such as the Ride of the Rohirrim, all sorts of factors. And so I'm going to touch on these ones today that really go into any great scene, but then I'm going to extrapolate them to really talk about the specifics of this scene and why I believe it is the greatest of all time. So starting off with number 1 is stakes. So there are multiple moments throughout this film that have incredibly high stakes, but you think about this moment with taking place within the battle for Middle-earth, the most crucial battle in the whole trilogy of the films, and really they're arriving at this moment when the good guys in Minas Tirith are on the absolute brink of destruction, and here they are to revive some sort of hope. So, when you talk about creating a great moment or leading up to a great moment, you need to have stakes. And so there are serious stakes at play here, including main characters whose lives are on the line in this battle, and even new main characters who are arriving to this battle whose lives are also going to be on the line. So you have plenty of stakes to go around in terms of the investment of characters and what's going on around them. So yeah, the stakes are insanely high, and it really sets the scene for what is to come. This scene is so uplifting and inspirational because you've had almost an hour's worth of stakes building up since the beginning of this battle up until the moment that the Rohirrim arrive. This is not an arrival that takes place shortly after the battle begins. No, this has been a long drawn out sequence that has engrossed you and kept you engaged and on the edge of your seat, seeing what's going to happen and seeing the good guys slowly, deteriorate and fall apart and all sorts of just destruction going on. So it is, it's a long build up, which is why when it finally arrives, when they finally arrive there on the hill, it means that much more. Number 2 is character development, and this is a key one because this is something that could be easily missed in a scene as epic as this, where it's mainly about the action when you're looking at it from that kind of superficial level. But when you really dive into what's going on here, obviously the heartbeat of the scene is you have Theoden, his speech, you have Eowyn, and you have Merry, who are on the same horse together. Eowyn and Merry in particular, they have really great development in the scene with very few words. On the one hand, you see Merry's fear, his sheer, despite him throughout this whole film wanting to ride to battle, wanting to be there with his friends to fight. And once he arrives, you just see the sheer terror and horror on his face as to what he's about to get into. So that is character development. That's seeing that even despite his bravery and all of that, that he is still well aware of what's in front of him and he's absolutely terrified by it. On the other hand, you have Eowyn, who is equally as scared as Merry about what's in front of her, but she also has this added fear of not wanting to be seen by her uncle, King Theoden. You see her turning away from him as he rides past. She is very scared of him finding out that she is there at the battle because she was not meant to be there. So that is character development. That is further informing the audience through subtle gestures and movements that she is still very fearful of her uncle in being there. And so that adds more weight to the moment when she finally does save his life, or save it momentarily later on against the Nazgul. That adds greater weight to that moment, that when he sees her there, he is not upset at her. He's happy to see her as the final thing he sees before he passes away. It's just great development, and it means so much more when you think about it in that greater context. And I wanted to take a moment to actually compare this to another great entrance or charge scene of another film, if you will, and that is the scene of the portals in Avengers Endgame, when obviously all of the Avengers come back after being snapped. This is a great scene, don't get me wrong, I love and I adore that scene, but I want to explain why it's not quite as good as the Ride of the Rohirrim. And really the key aspect of that is lack of character development, because yes, you get this great moments of all these characters coming back through the portals one after another, and they just sort of arrive and stand there. You don't learn anything more about them in that moment as they're arriving. There's no real sense of character development. The only one who you really get development from in that scene is Captain Rogers, Captain America, and he's just him seeing them arrive, but you don't really get any other emotions from any of the others that arrive, despite that there should be some more emotion with them arriving. You don't get that, whereas in this scene of the Ride of the Rohirrim, you get that extra development from Merry and from Éowyn and even from Theoden. So it's great stuff on that part to, one, have the epicness of a great entrance, but also to actually build something from it, not just have a kind of superficial sort of entrance where it's like, boom, there's their face, okay, on to the next one. Number 3 is cinematography. So I can't say enough about the cinematography of all 3 Lord of the Rings films. You can't find really any moments of bad cinematography. In fact, they're just riddled with amazing cinematography throughout. But we're talking about the Ride of the Rohirrim here, and this scene is no exception. The use of the colors and the lighting here is simply phenomenal. Starting off, from the moment they arrive, you have that contrast of the light on the hill behind them, representing that positivity, that energy, that that they're the force of good, whilst you still can see the dark clouds to the right side of the screen that represent the evil that they're charging towards. So that contrast is very important, and it's simply beautiful to look at. And whilst talking about the cinematography, we can also touch on, I guess, the CGI. So there's some really great blend of practical and CGI in this scene. You obviously have the close-ups and even some wider shots where you can clearly see it's real riders there who are in position. And then when you see those greater zoom out shots where you see thousands of them, it's clearly CGI, but it's great and it looks really great. It holds up 20 years after the fact. And so to have those constant back and forth between the practical and the CGI shots really helps create that sense of immersion and realism that you want from this kind of a scene. Number 4 is the music. I mean, I don't really have to say anything about this here. We all remember the music in this scene. It is essentially just the Rohan theme that from start to finish, as it slowly builds and builds and builds until it just hits its triumphant climax. But it's just such a beautiful score. You can hear it a million times and it just never gets old, but it just really sends this extra shiver up your spine during this scene where just with the visuals of this amazing army amassed to take on an even greater army. It just really influences, contributes to that sense of emotion, that sense of inspiration that what you're watching is just simply incredible. So yeah, I can't say enough about the music in this scene. And so whilst talking about sound, I want to also touch on the sound effects, namely the horn of Rohan is just amazing. The sound design there is phenomenal. I mean, who doesn't get goosebumps when they hear that horn? That horn alone makes you want to go to war with them as you're watching this film. And you also add to that the swords clacking against one another as Theoden's riding past them. It's just all the sound design in the scene and the whole film in general, to be honest, is just out of this world and just really adds that extra flair to the moment that just gives it that extra sense of greatness. So the fifth and final point that I'm going to bring up as to why I believe this is the greatest scene of all time is, you guessed it, Theoden's speech. I mean, this is the icing on the cake of an already amazing scene. But, you know, from the moment he starts speaking, I mean, the dialogue, first and foremost, is pure poetry. I mean, J.R.R. Tolkien was an absolute genius, but, you know, it's equally important the performance of that speech, and the actor there just absolutely knocks it out of the park. I mean, King Theoden, the actor playing him, he has so much gravitas, and you need that much gravitas to pull off a speech like that. And, you know, the fact that he's doing it while riding on a horse, you know, turning around, clacking the swords, and all sorts going on. And it's phenomenal the way it sounds. And it just adds that extra inspiration to the moment that gives you those extra goosebumps. I mean, there's just so many things going on in this whole scene that just adds layer after layer of essentially goosebumps to you as you're watching. And yeah, the speech is simply phenomenal. And yeah, it really helps to round out this amazing scene. So there you have it. Those are my key reasons as to why I believe it's the greatest scene of all time. I mean, it really just kind of touches on all the senses that you want to feel whilst watching any great movie or scene. You know, it inspires you, uplifts you, it builds tension for you. It rewards stakes that you've been feeling inside of you. You get to see character development of your favorite characters. It delivers, and beautiful music, sound design, visual effects, everything is going on in just perfect unison. It's just all you want and need from a film, and it's just perfectly executed. And so I just cannot speak highly enough of this scene and how amazing it is. And so yeah, that's my argument. I hope it convinces you. But yeah, there you have it. The Ride of the Rohirrim, to me, is the greatest scene of all time. So there you have it, guys. That's my thoughts overall on this topic. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. Which scene in any film do you believe to be the greatest scene of all time? I'd love to hear your arguments, or if you agree with this one, please give it a like. I'd really appreciate it. And subscribe to my channel, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.